Alright, starting Chapter 6, Track Safety Standards Class 6 through 9. Subpart G, General. 213.301, Scope of the Subpart. The Subpart applies to all the track used in for operation of the train speeds greater than 90 miles an hour, the passenger equipment, and greater than 80 miles an hour for freight equipment. Application Subpart G applies to the track required to support the passages and passengers of freight equipment in specific speed ranges higher than those permitted over the Class 5 track. For those speeds over above Class 5 track, the vehicles operated with the track must be considered as an integral system. The subpart does not apply with the technology such as magnetic leviation that does not use flange wheel equipment. Subpart G begins at a speed greater than 90 miles an hour for qualified passenger equipment and speed greater for 80 miles an hour for qualified freight equipment. The safety requirements for the high-speed track classes are contained with the Subpart G for the track safety standards, which covers the track classes 6 through 9 as standards for the lower and lower class tracks. The rules prescribed herein are minimum requirements for safety and high-speed rails as encouraged expected to maintain higher standards. The Subpart is intended to function as a standalone regulations governing any of the track belonging to one of these higher track classes. In other words, the track of the owner needs to refer only the Subpart G to compliance with the track safety standards for the track over the railroad's operation and train at the speed associated with the higher speed track classes. However, if the same track does not meet the requirements of Subpart G at any time, the subparts A through F apply. The requirements can constitute only one of the several components compromising the regulatory program permitting trains to travel at high speed. The FRA may also address the high speed issues regulation outside of Part 213, such as emergency preparedness, wheel condition, brake system, grades, crossing, track safety standards as an integral part of the large regulatory scheme. The subpart provides the necessary information with the Federal Railroad Administration and state personnel to properly interpret and enforce track safety standards in the higher track classes. Is not to be constructed as a modification, alteration, revision of track safety standards as published. The inspector should refer to this manual as often as necessary to understand the intent of any particular standard requirements prescribed in this part of the apply to specific track and vehicle track interaction conditions as lower the classes of the combination of track conditions. None of the individual amounts of the deviation from the requirements in this part may require remedial action to provide with the safety operation of the track. The high-speed track of the safety standards is based on a fundamental principle that the vehicles in the high-speed regime must demonstrate that they will not exceed minimum vehicle track performance safety limits when operating on specified track. Specific requirements are included with the qualification of the passengers or the persons engaged in the inspection, maintenance, and the high-speed track of the geometry track structure, both automated and visual inspection. High-speed standards address the condition with the existing and alone with the combination of the track of the vehicle interaction, while the individually not in violation of any standard could nonetheless present the hazard into the safe movement of the trains. As the inspection of the lower class, the inspector should encounter the rare event that the inspector should bring the condition to the attention of the company and the railroad officials, explaining the hazards in such a condition, encouraging it to rapid removal. Where the inspector is unable to be using professional experience to convince the railroad to initiate some action. The inspector should apply for the regional track specialist assistant, and it is unlikely to find railroad resistance in the removal of the recognized with a safety hazard. 213.303 Responsibility for compliance. A. Any owner of the track which the subpart applies who knows that the notice of that the track does not comply with the requirements of this subpart shall 1. Bring the track into compliance, 2. Halt the halt operations over the track. B. If the owner of the track with the subpart applies, assigning the responsibility for the track and another person by lease or otherwise notification of that assignment shall be provided with the appropriate Federal Railroad Administration and regional offices at least 30 days in advance of the assignment. The notification may be made in any part of the assignment shall be written including in the following: 1. The name and address of the track owner. 2. The name and address of the person to whom responsibility is assigned, assigner. The statement of the exact relationship between the track and the assigner. The precise identification of the track. A statement which is to the competency, ability, and assistance of the carry out the duties of the track under this part. And C. Where were we? A precise a statement of exact relationship between the track owner and the sign of the press identification of the track, the statement of competency, ability to assign the carry out of the duties of the track owner and under the subpart, a statement signed by the assignee of acknowledging the assignment of the person responsibility for the purpose of compliance with this subpart. C. The administration may hold the track owner or the assigner or both responsible for the compliance with the subpart and subject to the penalties under statute 213. 15. Application. The section describes the action that must be taken with the track owner. Once the owner knows that the track is not in compliance with the track safety standard, the track owner must bring the track into compliance by either repairing the defects, imposing all appropriate speed restrictions, to remove the track from service. Only two response options are available under this paragraph. Track owner, we know that we now have notice of non-compliance with the subpart, may either bring track into compliance with the subpart or halt operations over the track. The section does not offer the railroad the option of operating under the subpart with the supervision of a qualified personnel as the standard for the track of class through 1 through 5. Such option would permit to the much potential for the human error. Under the subpart, the track does not comply with the requirements of the class. It must be repaired immediately. Of the train speed must be reduced to maximum speed for the track classes of which the track complies. It is necessary for the occasion for the track owner to reduce the class track to 5 or below. When it occurs, the requirement of the lower class 1 through 5 will apply. This section also provides the part of the responsibility for the compliance can be someone other than the actual owner. The FRA may hold the responsible any party contracted with the track owner to ensure the compliance with this part. The FRA may hold the track owner and the assigner both responsible. The section gives the track owner the responsibility to notify the FRA through the appropriate regional office with the responsibility for the compliance with this part is assigned. The notification must contain the specific information required for the paragraph shall be made with 30 days prior to the assignment of the responsibility. Inspectors must determine the responsibility party when recommending civil penalties for noncompliance and alert chief counsel when the violations report involve parties other than the track owner. For class specific details, it is explicitly apparent to the track owner that they have an option to reclassifying the track of the lower class, bringing the track into compliance. For example, 213.351 rail joint state that if a rail joint is cracked or broken because they or broke because wear allows vertical movement or either right or all the bolts tighten and must be replaced. Obviously, one of the remedial actions above available to the carrier would be to place the speed restriction and reclassification of the track to class 1 or 2. For the defects and standards specific to the class, remedial actions are not printed in the appropriate section. For the track owners, often the question regards the remedial action available when the inspector discovers and records a turnout defective such as a missing or loose of the frog bolt. The carrier will not find the required remedial action in Statute 213.353 because the turnout is designed with certain redundancy. Some of the maintenance personnel suggest that the loose of the missing components should not always be considered defects unless they're present with the immediate hazard. However, it is also recognized that the condition will only deteriorate and is left unrepaired. One loose frog bolt over the several will seldom constitute with the immediate hazard, provided that the hazard was otherwise secure. On the other hand, a missing cotter pin with the critical location such as a connection rod could have these serious consequences. Consider the example of the loose or missing rail braces. One of the two loose braces are usually not considered to be an immediate hazard, provided that there are other braces in an acceptable function condition to support the stock rail. On the other hand, the several consecutive loose braces, especially in a high track class, could be much more serious. Intermediate patches of vegetation on the brushed side of the rolling stock may not be an imminent hazard, but more severe vegetation might have the potential of contributing to injury to an employee who is riding on the side of the car or locating on the locomotive cab windows. As above, the example that illustrates non-compliance specific details must be considered in the context of specific circumstances involved. The existence of non-class specific detail effect under the one of the set circumstances may not be serious, while the identical condition under other circumstances may constitute a safety concern. Although none of the specific details may not represent immediate hazard, these conditions will only degrade under the train traffic. There is important for the carrier, the FRA inspector to record these defects so that they will not be turned to left unrepaired. In summary, 1. The FRA should require that all non-compliant conditions, including non-specific class-specific detail effects such as loose or missing frog bolts, switch braces, must be taken into consideration through the inspection, recording the location, type, and the size of each of the defectives discovered. 2. The FRA inspector should evaluate the remedial action taken by the carrier. If any of the inspector becomes aware of the remedial action or lack of thereof, the non-class specific defect is not sufficient based on the circumstances. The inspector should seek appropriate action for the carrier. The no class specific defect is an imminent hazard such as a missing nut on a connection rod. The inspector should immediately inquire the remedial action plan with the carrier. 3. If the railroad does not institute the appropriate remedial action, the inspector should consider a recommendation violation. If the record that has been advised of the violation has been recommended and has not initiated the appropriate remedial action, the inspector should be prepared to issue a special notice for repairs under the guidelines described in Chapter 4 of this manual. 4. In this case, the non-specific detail is defective that does not pose an immediate hazard with the defect record of the inspector and discovers that no action was taken within the responsible time after the carrier had knowledge of the no defect. The inspector should consider enforcement operations described in item 3. In any case, if there is no appropriate action was taken and within 30 days, the inspector should consider enforcement tools outlined above. When a railroad inspector discovers a non-class specific defect, as with all defects, the railroad inspector must initiate the immediate action in accordance with the statute 213-365D. Immediate action taken with the railroad inspector must be recorded in accordance with the statute 213-369B. For the no-class specific defects, the record must show the responsible explanation of action taken. For example, the repair before the next train would be appropriate for the serious conditions. On the other hand, notation for the defect of such vegetation indicates the vegetation is scheduled to be cut by weed mower. The specific date within 30 days may be appropriate. The 30-day period represents only the maximum period that the FRA would expect all non-class specific defects are repaired or other appropriate action taken, and is not intended to create 30-day grace period for all defects. All non-class specific defects may not pose an immediate hazard for one of the train movement, but the condition may deteriorate to become a hazard to the following trains. It is responsible to expect the conditions such as the loose, missing frog bolts, braces are repaired as quickly as possible. However, the qualified railroad representative under Statute 213-305 may be determined the condition of the is not an immediate hazard or decided to call the assistance to make the repairs. The representative may decide to end the inspection, retrieve the necessary repair materials, return the lateral to make the repairs. In some cases, the representative may be determined the speed restriction is appropriate. 213-305 Designation of Qualified Individual General Qualification. Each track owner which with the subpart applies with the shall designate qualified individual responsible for the maintenance, inspection, track compliance with all the safety of the requirements prescribed in this subpart. Each individual, including the contractor and employee of the contractor, which is not a railroad employee designated to A. Supervise the restoration renewal of the track shall meet the following minimum requirements: at least 5 years responsible supervisor experience in railroad track maintenance and track class 4 or higher for the successful completion of the course over the offered by the employer or by a college level engineering program supplemented by the special on-the-job training emphasis of the technique to be employed in the supervision, restoration, renewal, high-speed track. 2. The combination of at least 1 year of responsible supervisor experience at the track maintenance in class 4 or higher through the successful completion of minimum 80-hour specialized training in the maintenance of the high-speed track provided with an employer or by a college-level program, engineering program supplemented as a special job training provided with the employer emphasized on the maintenance of the high-speed track. Or combination of at least 2 years of experience in track of compliance with the maintenance to the class 4 or higher, the successful completion minimum of 120 hours specialized training in the maintenance of high-speed track provided with the employer or the college-level engineering program supplemented by the special on-the-job training provided by the employer with the emphasizing maintenance high-speed track. 2. To demonstrate the track owner that the individual 1 knows and understands the requirements of the subpart. 2 can detect deviation of these requirements. 3 can prescribe appropriate remedial action to correct the safely compensate the deviations. 3. Be authorized by the writing of the track owner to prescribe the remedial action to correct the safely compensated with the deviation from the requirements of the subpart. Successful completion of the required examination on the subpart as part of the qualification process. B. In the inspection of the track, defects shall meet the following minimum qualifications: 1. 5 years responsible experience in inspecting track in class 5, 4 or above the successful completion of a course offered by the employer by the college level engineering program supplemented with a special job training emphasizing techniques and to be employed with the inspection of a high-speed track. 2. A combination of at least 1 year responsible experience in the track inspection of class 3, 4 or class 4 and above, with the successful completion of the minimum of 80 hours specified training with the inspection for the high-speed track provided with the employer by the college-level engineering training program supplemented special on-the-job provided with the employer with the emphasis on inspection of high-speed track. Alright, this kind of repeated itself. A combination of at least 2 tracks, experience with the track maintenance of class 4 above, the successful completion of a minimum of 120 hours specialized training with the inspection of the high-speed track provided with the employer from the college-level engineering supplemented with a special on-the-job provided with the employer with the emphasis on the inspection of the high-speed track. 2. To demonstrate the track owner of the individual knows to understand the requirements of the subpart. 2. Can detect deviations of the requirement. 3. Can prescribe appropriate remedial action to correct and safely compensate those deviations. 3. Be authorized in writing the track owner to prescribe the remedial action to correct the safely compensate compensate with a deviation for them. The requirement subpart of the successful completion of the record examination subpart of this is part of the qualification process. C. Individuals designated under paragraph A and B of this section that inspect the continuous welded rail track, supervise the installation and adjustment with the maintenance of continuous welded rail in accordance with the written procedures established in the track owner shall have 1. Current qualifications under paragraph A and B of this section. 2. Successfully complete the training course of at least 8 hours duration specifically developed for application of written of the continuous welded procedure issued track owner. And 3. Demonstrate the track owner that the individual knows, understands the requirements of the written continuous welded rail procedure. 2. Can detect deviations of those requirements. 3. Can prescribe appropriate remedial action to correct the safely compensated of those deviations. And 4. Written authorization for the track owner to prescribe remedial action to correctly safely compensate with the deviation for the requirements of those procedures. Successfully completion with the recorded examination of those procedures as part of the qualification process. The recorded examination is to be written or may be computer fileable with the results of an interactive training course. D. The person not qualified to supervise the certain renewals of the inspection track that are outlined in paragraph A, B, and C of this section, but the last 1 year of the maintenance of the way of the signal and experience may to pass trains over the broken rails with the pull aparts provided. 1. The track owner determines the person to be qualified as part of the doing, and so the train examines and re-examines the person periodically within 2 years after each of the prior examination of the following topics as they relate to safe passage of the trains over the broken rails and pull aparts, rail defect identification, cross conditions, track surface alignment, re-age restraint, rail and end mismatch, joint bars, maximum distance between rail ends and over which the train must be applied to pass. The sole purpose of the examination is the assertion of the person's ability to effectively apply these requirements, and examination may not be used to disqualify the person from their other duties. Minimum of 4-hour training is adequate for the initial training. 2. The person deemed safe at the train speed are limited to the maximum speed of 10 miles and over the broken rail or part of the pull apart. 3. The person shall watch all the movements of the broken rail and pull apart with the prepared with the stop if the train is necessary. 4. The person fully qualified under statute 213-305 the subpart is notified and dispatched for the location as soon as practicable for the purpose of the authorization, movement, and effectuating the temporary or permanent repairs. With the respective designation under the paragraphs A, B, C, and D of this section, each of the track owners shall maintain the written records of 1. Each designation in effect. 2. The basis of each designation, including but not limited to 1. The exact nature of the training courses attended with the set dates of thereof. 2. Therefore, manner with the track owner that determines the successful completion of the training course, including the test scores and the qualifying results. 3. The track inspector made by each individual is required in the statute 213-369. These records shall be made available for the inspection comply with the Federal Railroad Administration during the regular business hour. Application work on about the track of the structure supporting the qualified high-speed passenger trains, remaining for the employees and full aware of the need for the speed to perform the work. A person may be qualified for the restraint the renewals under the subpart of 3 ways. The first person must be confined with the 5 or more years with successful experience in the track maintenance for class 4 or higher. The successful completion of the course offered by the employer, the college level engineering program supplemented by the special on-the-job training. Second, the person may be qualified in combination with at least 1 year of supervisor experience in the track maintenance of class 4 or higher, 80 hours of specialized training of the college level supplemented on the job training. And under the third option, the railroad employee must have at least 2 years of experience in the maintenance of the high-speed track and can achieve the qualification status of completing 120 hours specialized training in its maintenance of the high speed of the track provided by the employer or by the college level engineering program supplemented by the special on-the-job training for the third option, all the part of the experience required but non-supervisory. Similarly, a person may be qualified to perform a track inspection of class 6, 7, 8, and 9, attaining the 5 or more experiences in inspection class track 4 or higher, completing the course taught by the employer or by the college-level engineering program supplemented with the special on-the-job training, or the person may be qualified in attaching combination of at least 1 year of experience of the in-track inspection class 4 or higher, successfully completing 80 hours of specialized training and inspection for the high-speed track provided by the employer to provide the college-level engineering program supplemented with the on-job training. Finally, as a person may be qualified by attaining 2 years of experience in track maintenance in the class 4 or above, with the successful completion of 120 hours special training and inspection for the high-speed track provided by the employer or by the college-level engineering program supplemented with the special on-the-job training provided by the employer, emphasizing the inspection for the high-speed track. For the third part, only of the action and experience but required for the non-supervisor. The third option is primarily intended to provide the way of the employees with the 2 years of experience of the maintenance of the high-speed track to gain the necessary training to be qualified in inspection track. The section includes specific requirements and qualification of the person charged with the maintaining inspection continuous welded rail, the training of employees with the continuous welded rail, procedures essentially for high-speed operations of each person inspecting and maintaining continuous welded rail must understand the continuous welded rail behaves and how to prevent the track from buckling and unadverse track area action from thermodynamic loading. Paragraph D allows the employees to be qualified in specific purposes, authorizing train movement of the broken parts of all parts of the section requires the employees to have at least 1 year maintenance of the way and signal experience, minimum of 4 hours of the training examination of the requirements related to the safe passages of the train over the broken rail and pull the parts of the examination association of the person's ability to effectively apply with the requirements. Railroad may use the examination to determine whether or not the person shall be allowed to authorize the train movements of broken rails as part of the pull parts. The speed over the broken rails or pull parts shall not exceed 10 miles an hour of the moment of the movement of authorized personnel qualified under the subsection may further restrict the speed and warranted by the particular circumstances. The person qualified under this paragraph must present a site ability to instantly communicate with the train crew so that the movement can be stopped immediately if necessary. Fully qualified persons under Statute 213-305 must notify the dispatch with the location promptly, assume the responsibility for authorizing train movements affecting repairs that would promptly isn't meant to provide with the railroad some flexibility event, and there only one train passing through the condition prior to the time qualified person while it would report for the regular tour of duty, where a train is due to pass over the condition, whether before fully qualified person is able to report to the scene. Railroad should not use the person qualified under Statute 213-305D to authorize multiple train movements over such conditions extended period of time. Inspectors may request the owner's verification on experience, qualification, supervisor, track inspection personnel, those supervisor, track personnel who inspect and maintain continuous welded rail, those qualified to pass the train over the broken rails or pull the parts. Each inspector maintain an up-to-date list of the owner's qualified personnel to determine the effectiveness of their inspection or work. The submission of seniority roster or job awarding bulletin is not to be considered the satisfactory identification of the qualified employees. The basis of their designation, specific names, and individuals should be made available to the writing by the owner. If the inspector is in doubt of the qualification of the owner's supervisory inspector personnel, the inspector should examine the owner's inspection record. The track safety standards require the retention of the record track of the inspection reports for the 1 year of the owner's division office. The second, should the records consistently fail to reflect the actual track condition, questions should be rephrased by the competency for the qualification of the person establishing the record. When in doubt, the qualification of the owner or supervisor inspector, the inspector should discuss the matter with the owner. Failure to owner to have the maintain written record to designating employee for the basis of each designation, the deviation, the track safety standard, and complete qualification with the record would also constitute the deviation from the standard. Designated employees include supervisor, inspector, those supervisors and inspectors qualified with the continuous welded rail, those partially qualified to the passing over the broken parts and the pull parts. Alright, defective code 30501. No written record of the name of the qualified person to supervise the restoration renewal of the track under the traffic and to inspect the track of defects to pass the train over the broken rails or pull the parts to maintain and inspect and continuous welded rail. Defective code 30502. The failure of the track owner to provide written authorization qualified designated individuals. 30503. The failure to qualified person to pass the train over the broken rails and pull the parts. 30504. Training speeds 10 miles an hour over the broken rails and pull the parts. 305 failure to properly notify dispatch persons fully qualified under Statute 213-305 of the location, broken rail, and part of the pull apart. Statute 213-307, class of trap operating speed, except for provided in paragraph B of the section 213-329, 213-337A, and 213-345A. C. The following maximal allowable speeding limits apply. Over the track that meets all the requirements prescribed in subpart R, classes 6 through 9. Class 6 has a maximum allowable train speed of 110 miles an hour. Class 7, 125 miles an hour. Class 8, 160 miles an hour. And it's 2 trains. And Class 9, 200 miles an hour. Freight may not be passenger. Freight may be transported passenger trains in the following condition are met: the vehicles utilized to carry such freight are equal to the dynamic performance they've qualified in accordance with the section 213, 345, and 329, and of the subpart. Loaded distribution securement of the freight vehicle will not adversely affect the dynamic performance of the vehicle. The axle loading of the pattern uniform does not exceed the passenger locomotive axle loading utilized with the passenger service surface operating at the same maximum speed. 3. No carrier may accept the transportate hazardous materials as defined in statute title 49 CFR 171.8, except those provided in the column 9 of the hazardous material table to title 49 CFR 172.101 for the movement of the same train as the passenger carrying vehicle in the or in column 9B of the table of movement in the train with non-passenger carrying the vehicle. 2. Operating speeds excess of 150 miles an hour authorized in this part only by the conjunction of the rule or applicability addressing safety issues presented with the sub by the system. B. If the segment does not meet all the requirements for the intent of the class, the reclassified next lower class of the track, which does not meet all the requirements of the subpart, segment does not meet all the requirements of Class 6, requirements of Class 1 through 5 apply. Application. As lower classes, high-speed trains classify the track solely on the basis of authorized speed of the freight and passenger trains, respectively the track density, axle loads, trailing, tonnage, curvatures, grade, and rail weight, and the tolerance are specified in the track safety standards for each of the classes. Deviation beyond the limit and tolerances require repair or reduction of the speed in the appropriate classes. If the condition does not meet the requirements of the track of Class 6 through 9, the owner may reduce the speed to comply with the requirements of Class 1 through 5. Exemption: the maximum allowable operating speed for each of the classes of the two parallel standards for the lower class, including the maximum operating curving speed required under Statute 213-329, railing defects under Statute 213-337, except as the speed of 10 miles an hour over the maximum intended operating speed permitted with the qualification phase on the 213-345. All equipment, whether used passenger or freight, must demonstrate the same vehicle performance and qualified on the high-speed track. Hazardous materials, except for the limited and small quantities, may move on the bulk on trains operated on at high speeds. Operating speeds excess of 150 miles an hour is authorized only in conjunction with a rule of particular applicability addressing the safety issues presented with the system, except that speeds 160 miles per hour is authorized during the qualification of the vehicle track system per system 213-345. Alright, your defect code 30701, train speed exceeding 200 miles an hour without the FRA approval. 30702, the freight transported with the passenger train is unqualified vehicles. 30703, loading, distribution, and securement of the freight vehicle that adversely affects the dynamic performance of the vehicle. Axle loading pattern is not uniform, exceeding the passenger locomotive axle loading in the passenger trains at the same maximum speed. 30704, carrier accepted the transportation hazard material defined in Title 49 CFR Part 171.8, which is not acceptable for movement. 30705, transportation operating exceeding 150 miles an hour, not in conjunction with the rule of particular applicability addressing the safety issues presented with the system. Alright, 213-309, restoration and renewal of the track under the traffic conditions. Restoration and renewal of the track under the traffic conditions limited to the replacement of the worn, broken, missing components fastenings that do not affect the passenger train passage of the trains. B, the following activities express prohibited under the track conditions: any work that interrupts the rail continuity is a joint bar replacement of the rail replacement, any work that adversely affects the lateral vertical stability of the track owner, with the exception of the spot tampering with the isolated condition when not more than 115 lineal feet of the track involved with at any one time the ambient temperature is not 95 degrees Fahrenheit. 3, the removal and replacement of the railroad fastening more than one tie at the time into 15 miles an hour. Application of the term restoration renewal in this section does not have the same meaning in the context of Statute 213.11. Restoration renewal of the track under the traffic conditions and the low speed standards. The essential difference between the sections 213.11 and this option of the qualified person to authorize the movements over the work area with the speed determined if the person are severely restricted. Under Statute 213.11, the qualified person may determine the safe permanent train to pass through the work area at any speed upon the permitted permitted on the track. Under Statute 213-309, these options are further limited because of the potential the human error and the speed involved with the options available for the lower class for the designated person to perform the general restoration under the traffic and set train speeds not available under this section. Any restoration under the traffic conditions beyond the replacement of worn, broken, missing components with the passing minor levels of spot surfacing prohibited, but the speed restriction must be imposed at the place of the track below Class 6 when the requirements from the classes 1 through 5 apply. The section does not limit any of the restoration while the track is out of the service, then restored to service. This section addresses the elements of the concern: 1, the stability of the track as the structure is significantly degraded; 2, the road worker safety is compromised. All right, your defect codes 30901, reserve 30902, work performed during the period of restoration renewal under the traffic condition which interrupts rail continuity. 30903, work performed during the period of restoration renewal under the traffic condition which adversely affects the track's stability. 30904, removal of the replacement rail fastening on more than one tie at a time within 15 feet during the period of restoration renewal under the traffic conditions. All right, 213.311, measuring the track not under load. When unloaded track is measured to determine the compliance with the requirements of the subpart, evidence of the rail movement, if any of the occurs while the track is loaded, shall be added to the measurement of unloaded track. Your application, in addition with the static unloaded geometry measurements taken with the amount of the visually detectable dynamic loaded deflection occurs in the train movement must be considered includes the amount of the vertical and lateral rail deflection occurring between the rail base and the tie plate and the cross tie from the voids between the cross tie and the ballast section resulting from elastic compression. Any combinations of the above must be added. Each of the deflection over the running rails must be measured, properly considered with the computation. The collective deviations under the load is very important for the consideration to be given with both rails when measuring these deflections, illustrating the concept of the relation for the lateral movement of the rail movement into the tie plate. Figure 611 shows the tie plate dynamic gauge 4 foot 9.5 inches or 57.5. At 5/8 inches below the top of the range is static gauge of 4 foot 9 at 57 inches and a half, and the movement is 1.5 inch. Vertical lateral deflectors may be found in locations such as rail joints, turnout locations, poor wooden cross ties, conventional cut spikes, contestant conditions, bridge abutments, oval curvatures where the subgrade has been settled with incipient geometry conditions exist. The incipient means of the beginning to appear. 213.317 waivers. Any owner track which subpart applies to the petition Federal Railroad Administration for the waiver from any of all the requirements prescribed in this subpart. B. The petition of the waiver under this section shall be filed with the manner of containing the information required in Statute 211.7 and 211.9 of this chapter. If the administration finds the waiver is the public interest consistent with the Railroad Safety Administrator may grant the waiver subject to any of the conditions the administration deems necessary when the waiver is granted, with the administrator publishes the notice containing the reason for the granting waiver application. Inspectors have no authority to grant waiver to the track from track safety standards. Any petition with the waiver must be filed with the owner of the docket clerk office of the Chief Counsel in Washington, D.C., referring to the chapter 3 of this manual for more information regarding the waiver of the procedure. 213.319, drainage. Each drainage or other water carrying the facility under the immediate adjacent to the roadbed must be maintained with the kept free of obstruction, accommodating the expected water flow for the area concerned. One of the most essential elements of the track maintenance and comprehensive drainage system of the drainage facility, the bridge, trestles, culverts must be given carefully detailed consideration. Drainage facilities must be examined during the inspection. Open under the track are used in the channel that diverted with the water one side of the roadbed to the other. The track safety specifies that each of the drainage structures is maintained, but the inspector should observe the condition with the effective integrity of the structure, such as a culvert apart with the separation, crushing, uneven settlement due to the failure of lackhead walls, coupled with the frost action to seeps of a gradient or insufficient support. Drain openings must also be inspected. Notice with the given in this debris has accumulated to such an extent that the extended water flow cannot be accumulated. Most of the railroad drain structures have existed for many of the years if properly maintained with the kept free to the degree that considered to be adequately designed and accommodated expected water flow, even though the recent high water marks may be slightly above them in the inlet operation. Culverts designed to submerge inlets are the common when the questions are raised concerning the adequacy of the drainage structure. The track specialist should be consulted. The inspector must take the notes condition of right-of-way of ditches, culverts, trestle, bridges, inlets, water-carrying structure, passages, outlets, and tail ditches, berm ditches, scorching, embankments, piles, and piers and channels, and abutments, filing of the passageway, or silting, sand wash, and debris. Inspectors must call the attention of the track owner and the drainage condition to deem the hazardous and potential hazards in the safety train operation over the track's subgrade. 13901, the drainage of the water carrying the facilities may not be maintained. 13902, the drain water carrying the facility obstructed the debris. 13903, the damage of the water carrying facility collapse. 13904, damaged water carrying facility obstructed by vegetation. 13905, the drainage of the water carrying facility obstructed by silting. 13906, damage of the water carrying facility deteriorated to allow the subgrade saturation, and 13907 uncontrolled water undercutting track structure and the embankment. 213, 321 vegetation on railroad property which is not immediately adjacent to the railroad bed should be controlled so that it does not A. become the fire hazard tracking carrying structures, B. the visibility of the railroad sign or signals along with the right of way and all at highway railway crossings, C. interfere with the railroad implies performing the normal track side duties, perform D. Prevent functional and single communication lines, prevent the railroad employees from visual inspection, moving equipment from their normal duties and stations. Application: the inspector must be aware of the live dead growth of the dirt, tumbleweeds, debris, and etc. Continuous fire hazards of the timber, bridges, trestles, wooden blocks, culverts, other carrying structures. Obstruction of the visibility, railroad sign signals, vegetation, deviation from the track safety standards. Although the signal is important, the visibility of the certain signals must be closely observed, i.e. block signals, interlocking signals, speed signs, other signs affecting the movement of the trains, close clearance signs, whistle posts, and mile posts. Paragraph B includes the requirement of the clear vegetation of the signs, signals in the railroad right-of-way to the highway railroad crossing because of the scope of the Part 213 limits vegetation requirement of the railroad property that is not intended to be an attempt to dictate the standard for the surrounding landowners. The paragraph intends only to convert the clearing of the vegetation of the highway railway crossing and the railroad property to provide adequate visibility to traveling the public of the railroad sign and signals. It is not intended to cover and preempt the state local requirements for the clearing of the vegetation, railroad rights of the way, and highway gradeway crossings. Judgment must be exercised by the inspector to determine whether the trackside vegetation interfered with the railroad employees' performance of the normal trackside duties, weeds covering the track, of the hindering the ability of and implying the inspector see the track structure components is not necessarily a non-compliant condition. Before citing the railroad for the vegetation interfering with the signal communication lines, the inspector must confirm that the line is active, and occasionally, however, the inspector may observe the vegetation and the lines appear to be no longer the functional communication between the track inspector and the FRI signal of the train control. The inspector must be necessary. The railroad representative cannot be informed the state as to the signal communication line where interfering with the actual line of the vegetation may cause the fault signal indications or disrupt communications that are vital safe to the safe train operation. Whether they are questioned in regard to vegetation, single lines, or joint inspection, track signal personnel encouraged with the violation report. If necessary, it will be executed by the track inspector with the concurrency of the single inspector. Judgment must be exercised by the inspector to determine whether or not the vegetation prepared with the railroad employees visually inspection rolling stock for the normal duty stations. Alright, defects code 3201. 32101, combustible vegetation around the track carrying structure. 32102, vegetation obstruction visibility railroad signs and fixed signs. 32103, vegetation obstructs passing day, night, and signals by railroad employees. 32104, vegetation interferes with the railroad employees performing normal trackside duties. 32105, vegetation prevents the proper function of the signal on all communication lines. 32106, excessive vegetation of the train off the depot interlocking plant of the carmen's building, etc. prevents the employee from doing visually inspecting moving equipment when their duties so required. 32107, excessive vegetation train meeting that prevents for the proper inspection moving the equipment by the railroad employees. 32108, the excessive vegetation of the tow paths around the switches with employees performing normal trackside duties. 32109, vegetation brushing side of the rolling stock. 32110, vegetation obstruction visibility grade crossing warning signals by traveling public. Alright, 323 trackage. Gauge is measured between the head of the rail and the right angle of the rail has been played to 5/8 of the inch between the top of the rail and head. Gauge shall be within the limits prescribed in the following table. Class 6 should be the gauge must be 4 foot 8 inches, but not more than 4 foot 9 1/4 inches. The change of the gauge in 31 feet and not greater than a half inch. And that is also 6, 7, 8 is the same. And class 9 is 4 foot 8 1/4 inch but not more than 4 foot 9 1/4 inch. And change of the gauge within 31 feet, not more than a half an inch. The application of the rules establishes minimum, maximum, limited gauge of the variation of the rate gauge. The difference for the authorized speeds to abrupt the change of the gauge produced with a significant wheel force at speeds. Minimum and maximum length of the gauge values of the class 6, 7, 8, and 9 were set to minimize onset truck hunting. Inspectors may measure the surface sufficient intervals to assure that the track is being maintained with the prescribed limits. Particular attention will be given to the gauge the turnouts, whether the high lateral train of the forces will be expected. Gauge should be measured where the line and surface irregularity observed by the inspector remembers to observe the evidence of lateral movement Movement. The actual standard track gauge with the rule graduate in inches and acceptable measuring devices. Gauge is not specified and limits to track safety standards is a defect. The FRA inspectors may use a portable tracking loading fixture or PTLF and described in Statute 213-110. The purpose of measuring and loading in gauge. 321.01, gauging dimension exceeds allowable tangent track. 323.02, gauge dimension less allowable for the tangent track. 323.03, the gauge dimension exceeds allowable curve track. 323.04, the gauge dimension allows less than available for the curve track. 325.05, 323.05, reserve. 323.06, gauge variation with 31 feet and exceeding allowable. And we're going to take a break in alignment.